Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. At BriteVibe, we believe everyone deserves to be happy. But in today's world, everywhere you turn, there is division and negativity. At BriteVibe, we have created a global movement to bring 8 million people together who are inspired to live bright, live bold, and share bright vibes. Alone, it can be hard to change, but together we can change the world. Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. Well, Nathan Crane, welcome to the show, my friend. It's so good to have you on today. I was excited. We've never met before, but I've read some of your stuff and watched some. You're doing great stuff in the world, and I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. This is exciting. I mean, the work that you're doing just sounds incredible. And just talking off camera a few minutes ago, it sounds like we have so much in common, similar interests and projects that we're working towards. So happy to be here, man. This is great.
Yeah. And so I want to get in for our listeners and our viewers, kind of get into why we wanted you on the show is because you're so passionate about a lot of things, but really it's kind of holistic health, right? Holistic health, sustainability, it sounds like, which I didn't know until we were talking before the show. But really, let's start back kind of, you've got some of it on here, but let's start back where your journey started. Because for me, it's always so interesting when I'm listening to speakers. It's kind of like, why are they so passionate about this? Why do they care, right? And I find that usually with anybody that we have on the program that's passionate about life and passionate about health, vitality, helping other people, it's because they were at a time where that was the opposite of what their experience was. And then they have a huge catalyst. It's almost like I've started to feel this way as like people that have the most concentrated pain at some point in their life have a biggest catalyst for doing good in the world. It's almost like if you had this happy, complacent life your whole life, you'd just be like, eh. But if you've had some real shit that you've gone through, right, then you're like, once you kind of get a understanding of, hey, life doesn't have to be this way, then it's naturally for you to go, hey guys, wait, we don't have to live like this, right? There's another way. So it sounds like this started for you kind of around late teen years, 18, 19 years old or something. You were kind of going through some stuff.
Yeah, well, 9 years old, really.
Oh, 9. Okay, all right.
It started a little bit earlier.
Okay.
Fortunately and unfortunately. Fortunately, I got a lot of that shit out of the way early. Unfortunately, I lived about 3 or 4 lifetimes in that 9-10 year period between 9 and 18.
Okay.
So, I'll go back a little bit, but just to kind of recapture something you said there. I mean, it really shows you that there is purpose for pain in our lives. And I think one of the things that I've learned and hopefully have been able to help a lot of people with over the years is learning how to take that pain and turn it into purpose and learn from that pain and not let it bog you down and prevent you from living your best life, prevent you from being the healthiest, happiest, most fulfilled version of yourself, because far too often we get stuck and trapped in that pain, right? And we let that pain dictate our decisions, and then it does become our destiny. That pain becomes our destiny. You see people today, most of the people I work with today are 50, 45, 50, 60 and older, dealing with chronic diseases, like cancer, for example. Cancer is one of the most is the thing that I help the most people with today, but underlying cancer is emotional health,
emotional pain,
health,
right?
Dietary health, environmental health, relational health. It's all dictates whether somebody is going to end up with a cancer diagnosis or not. It actually, in fact, has very little to do with genetics, and it has significantly more to do with diet and lifestyle and behaviors, environmental toxins, emotional health, and so forth. And so you see that pain from your childhood or your teenage years or your even early adult years where we hold on to it for so long, and it does end up manifesting as a cancer diagnosis or heart disease or neurodegenerative disease. These chronic inflammatory diseases that are primarily preventable.
Right.
Most of these diseases are totally preventable. They're lifestyle related. But because we're holding on to this emotional pain that we're not even aware of, it's literally inhibiting our immune system. It's upregulating our sympathetic nervous system, and it's causing chronic inflammation in the body that leads to these diseases. And we can talk more about that later if you want to. But that's where a lot of my focus and research and passion has been for like 15 plus years now. But my own journey of coming to this place was certainly one through the fires. It was, through hell and back again. So going back, I mean, I'll give a short version, really. By 15 years old, I was pretty much homeless. addicted to drugs and alcohol, living on the streets, in and out of jail, house arrest, headed for death or prison for the rest of my life.
And if you don't, if you're okay or comfortable with it, what was the catalyst for being homeless? Because, you know, most of us, for the majority of listeners on this, probably didn't ever experience homelessness and weren't homeless at 15. So what was kind of some of the catalyst that precipitated that?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, right? So I've done so much emotional healing work over the years, which I encourage many people tuning in, I'm sure, have done a lot of it, and it's something we should probably all should do for the rest of our lives. But the more we do, the more we learn about ourselves, and the more free we become of that emotional baggage, right? And so I just did a session the other day with an incredible, I'd call her a spiritual emotional therapist, if you will, and we went back to my childhood at 9 years old. And at 9 years old, I was stealing my mom's cigarettes and smoking and selling them on the playground. Right. And already by 12 years old, I was drinking very heavily and then getting into drugs. And so it's like, why at that age would somebody get into that? Well, you know, I watched my parents fight day in and day out. And at that age, I didn't have the emotional intelligence to understand that. I certainly took in a lot of that into myself. Maybe even blaming myself, you know, didn't feel a sense of security or safety, didn't feel a sense of respect or trust, didn't feel a sense of like I could tell somebody what I was going through or feeling. It was like I felt as if I had to bottle up all those emotions inside. I couldn't show weakness or cry. Sometimes I'd spontaneously cry and have no idea, and then I would like shame myself for doing it, right? And so realizing that, man, I really needed somebody around to just like hug me and show me love and say, hey, it's okay, you know, you can trust me, you can tell me what's going on, those emotions are okay to feel, right? We've all gone through that in our lives at some point. I think all of us tuning in have had one or more childhood adverse events, right? Where it's some trauma, some physical, mental, emotional trauma, so, you know, the loss of a loved one, a parent, somebody going to prison or jail, alcoholism or drug addiction in the family. Even if you didn't embody that yourself, in the family, you know, they've studied that causes of childhood adverse events. And the more childhood adverse events you have, the more likely you are to end up with chronic diseases like cancer. That massive study that was done by Kaiser Permanente, it's called the ACEs study. You know, the more adverse events you have, I think it's 3 or more, they looked at that literally reduces 20 years off of your lifespan if you don't ever heal that underlying trauma. And that can be anything from all those things that I just mentioned.
So, and in that, to kind of, I guess you're the expert in this field. I've been on the fringes of the field, as far as just being around people like you, I guess, is the way I've kind of absorbed stuff. But it doesn't actually, it can be real or perceived as a child, right? It's not that this had to have happened. It's even if I have the perception of a child and I witnessed something that didn't, like I heard a story once of a lady who her father had thrown her up and then caught her at one point just playing, but at 3 or 4 years old, all of a sudden that became a traumatic event later in her life because she felt this sense of fear and was, you know, here he was putting her in danger and risk, and all he was doing was like literally like we do with our kids, right? We toss them up and cut. But it doesn't have to be that you had something that was like a major thing. Like externally, it could have just been an internal irrationalization or an internal misperception of what was the reality of the situation, but that still embeds in us, right? It's still
100%,
right?
100%. And actually, you know, the latest science shows us that our body produces something called neuropeptides when we have those traumas, and those neuropeptides get released into various organs in the body. And if those neuropeptides never get flushed out of your system, they can basically get lodged there and turn into chronic inflammation, and that inflammation can lead to diseases. And so when you flush these neuropeptides out of your system, because it's your brain trying to keep you safe. That's what people go, well, why would we have this stupid thing that, you know, like neuropeptides and hold this trauma? And it's like, one, because you don't have the emotional intelligence of how to process it at that age. So your body goes, okay, I'm not safe. Let's just, boom, embody this in my heart or in my liver, in my lungs, wherever I can store it at that time until I'm old enough to recognize it and then process it emotionally. And then when you do, and you feel like you hear, and anyone tuning in who's ever had like a release, an emotional release, you feel like, this weight has been lifted off my shoulders. What is that? Physically, it's neuropeptides leaving your system. energetically, it's if you study traditional Chinese medicine or Qigong, for example, energy, it's blockages being released out of your energetic fields.
Right.
And now we can study that and measure that with our scientific devices today, which is also really fascinating, right? But if we don't ever heal those things, even if we don't know what they are, we can release these things through the different processes and practices that we can talk about. Some of the ones that have been most effective for me and with a lot of the people that I work with today.
Sure.
But if we don't ever use those practices and processes to release them, then you're going to end up with some gut issues or heart issues or kidney issues or weight issues, for example. Can't ever overcome your overweight or obesity or just self-deprecation, if you will. So back to your question, how did I end up homeless at 15? I mean, so by 12 years old, so I don't blame my parents at all for any of it. They were doing the best they could with what they had.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And I love them so much to this day. But at that age, I just didn't understand it. They ended up getting divorced at 12 years old. I just was like, oh, well, that's good. I'm glad you guys got divorced. You're not fighting anymore. Again, another one of those things that's an adverse childhood event.
Right.
Don't know how to process it. Just, take it inside, store it inside. Thinking I know how to process it, but at that age, there's no way. And, by 15, really difficult for my mom to know what to do with me. I mean, I was out drinking, I was partying, I was getting arrested. I ended up just looking for anything that gave me pleasure and escape from from reality.
From the emotional pain that you'd experienced, right? The trauma.
Yeah, all that emotional pain, I didn't know how to deal with it. So some people go to food, some people go to sex, some people go to sitting in front of a TV 8 hours a day. Some people, there's a lot of things
coping
we look
mechanisms
for to fill that void, right? For me, it was drugs and alcohol, it was partying, it was sex, it was all of it. And so, except for me, it wasn't food. I didn't have that issue with food. It was other things.
Right.
And so, at 15, my mom didn't know what to do, and she just said, "Look, you can't stay here. You've got to leave." So she had to kick me out of the house, and that was another emotional trauma. At that time,
sure. You've just been rejected by.
I had to deal with that.
Yeah.
And then so I was basically on my own from then. I lived with a girlfriend and her family for a while. I lived out of the back of my car. I lived under park benches. I lived at friends' houses, and I moved in with a really good friend of mine at that time who became a brother, and his family were actually very loving, kind, spiritual people. And so Dennis Davis and Martina Davis, and they became kind of like a second father and mother to me at the time.
Right.
It was really beautiful. I got to experience what it was like to be in the presence of people who were able to give compassion and able to understand and teach and share. And even though I was going out every day and doing, all the crazy stuff I was doing, I'd come back and have this sense of safety, of respect, of kindness, and that kind of opened me up to a whole new level of reality. I was experimenting a little bit with psychedelics at that time as well, mostly just mushrooms, and that opened me up to a whole other side of reality as well that I hadn't experienced before. So it was really the combination of the two, being in this presence of loving spiritual people and taking things like mushrooms and going out into nature and seeing nature for the first time as living, breathing, the trees. Like I could see and feel the trees breathing, right, and living. And so having that connection, and then I just had this big awakening moment. And my best friend and I at the time just moved to California at 18 years old, and that's where basically I say that we pretty much ran out of gas in Oceanside, California, and that's where I started my life over. Right. And so that felt like multiple lifetimes there. And then from 18 until now, that felt like another 3 or 4 lifetimes of just going through all this healing stuff that needed to be done. But it's been a fascinating journey of learning from all that and then saying, okay, how can I not only better myself, but help other people become better as well? Because we all go through our pain, we all go through our trauma, we all go through our adverse events. But now it's like, okay, I've got the tools, the research, the understanding, the capability to help others, get through that as well and turn that pain into purpose, into health, into happiness.
If you're enjoying this talk with my friend Nathan Crane, you might be interested in something that he has been working on for over 10 years. It's all about conquering cancer with a little-known cancer treatment that is on the cutting edge of our understanding of cancer. Nathan has interviewed top cancer experts and watched thousands of people recover from this horrible life sentence. and has discovered something incredible. There's a common thread between many of the people who conquer cancer. It's one simple thing, and it almost guarantees that their cancer will not keep coming back. If you would like to know more about this missing link to cancer treatment, check out the 3-minute video linked below. As I'm taking all that in, which I totally agree 110% with all of that, you know, it's not that you just wait till you have one of these things, right? I mean,
Right.
I think I was lucky enough that somehow, some way, I bumped my head enough times that I started about 15 years ago or more, probably now. I don't want to think about how far along that is, but a couple of those lifetimes ago, as you would say. And I just happened to start engaging in the healing process, and it's still continuing literally moment by moment, day by day, as life has unfolded, right? It's still an ever ongoing, for me, a healing process, right? It has never stopped. But there were some, you know, heavy stuff along the way. And I guess I just feel blessed that I didn't develop something. Had I not started that path, I truly feel like that, yeah, I would have been a lot more physically, you know, disabled, or sickness, disease, you know, all of that stuff. Because at one point I was sick a lot, but then I started processing stuff. I mean, I was sick all the time and always at the doctor's office. It was usually just sinus. It started off as small stuff like sinus infections and stuff like that. And then thank God I started doing work, personal development, that then led to more spiritual work. But yeah, let's not wait until it's like knocking at our door, right? I mean, for people that are already there, that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, that you work with, you know, that's one thing, and let's address it. But you know, let's start in our 20s and 30s, right? Or whatever age you're at. It doesn't matter what age you're at. We all have stuff that we're carrying. There's not, I mean, I think that's part of the human condition, right? There's nobody on the face of the earth that I know of that's currently alive that doesn't have something that they need to process at some level. It may not be, right? It may not be 1,000 pounds, but it may be a pound, but it's still there. It's still...
Unless you're the Dalai Lama.
Well,
I think he's pretty close to being enlightened, but you know.
I don't know him. I don't know him personally. I would like to think so, right? I've read some work that says that there's some people on the face of the earth that are very, very good states of consciousness, but I don't know them personally. Maybe I do, Nathan. Maybe you're the first person I met that's at that level.
Oh, I've still got stuff to work on. I'll tell you that much for sure.
But as you know, as we're talking, I think that's important for people to realize that doing the work sucks a lot of times. I find anyway, doing the work sucks. It hurts. It's painful. There's lots of, you know, crying sometimes, and sometimes not. I mean, it's different for everybody. But if you don't engage in it, it engages you, I guess is the way I look at it. You either lean into the pain or the pain finds you. At least that's been my experience.
It takes over. It takes over your life, your consciousness, your behavior. You know, the thing that I think is important for people to understand is look at your life and see where you struggle. Right. This is where it's really helpful to go, hey, where can I, you know, mold and transform and shape that kind of highest version of myself in my life? What needs a little bit of extra clay here, or take some off here, right? It's like you're creating your masterpiece, your sculpture, if you will, and that's your life, that's you, right? And it's not about judging. It's like, hey, there's a little extra here I need to kind of trim off, and there's more I need to put up here. I need to polish this side a little bit. And so you take a look at your life and go, okay, what's most challenging in my life right now?
Right.
Is it my finances? And if it's my finances, why is that? What are the beliefs that I have, the subconscious programming that I have, the how I was raised, what I've been taught, the things that I say about finances, about money, that are keeping me trapped in poverty, and I don't want to be in poverty, for example, right? Or you know, always has, as Jim Rohn used to say, having too much month at the end of the money, right? It's like, I've been there. I've been poor, you know, living on the streets, homeless, been through a lot of that pain, a lot of that suffering, a lot of the physical sickness as well, which thankfully have been able to heal that over the years. Like, and so you look at the areas of your life that's most challenging. Is it your health? Are you struggling with your weight? Are you struggling with a chronic disease? Are you struggling with digestive issues? Are you struggling with chronic fatigue, autoimmune disease? Actually, some of the autoimmune disease experts I've interviewed recently say if you add up all the autoimmune diseases, which there's over 100 now, into one category, there's actually more people with autoimmune disease and who die from autoimmune disease then die from cancer. And cancer is the second leading cause of death. Right now, 10 million people per year die from cancer around the world, and it's primarily preventable, right? Same with autoimmune disease. Autoimmune disease is primarily preventable. So, I mean, we're talking 90, 95% plus of these diseases can be prevented completely by how we approach life, our diet, our lifestyle, our mindset. And so what's most challenging for you in your life? Where are you struggling the most? And take a good account of that. I mean, write it down and say, okay, it's my finances, it's my health, it's this or that. And then you go, okay, so if you're struggling there and you're working towards being better there, okay? So let's say you've been struggling with your health for a long time and you've been working towards being better at your health for a long time, but you just don't seem to make much progress. Then you have to go back and look at your belief systems, right? Because in the subconscious, we know, I mean, Bruce Lipton, epigeneticist, good friend of mine, colleague, I've worked with him for many years. The Biology of Belief, everybody should read that book. He's identified, and the leading edge science shows us that literally our subconscious beliefs are dictating about 95% of our conscious thoughts and actions every single day. So 5% is dictating 95%, which is crazy to think about.
Yes.
And we can change that, and we can transform that. But if you're just behaving out of these subconscious patterns every single day, then you're going to get the same result every single day. Right? No matter how hard you try to change it, no matter how much you think about it, your conscious thinking can never fully change what your subconscious believes. Right. That's the key.
Yep.
Right.
And then, and so we've developed a special pill. No.
So I actually have this. I have this pill for $29.99.
Right, for $29.95, you too can be cured.
This is actually a Wi-Fi repeater, by the way. This is not
but that does lead to my question, which is, how, right? How? What is the antidote? Because again, if it's subconscious, right? If we're saying 95% of it's subconsciously just triggering and there's patterns, how do you deal with that? What's the cure, I guess?
It's so simple. It's so simple, but simple's not always easy.
Right.
But the truth of the universe is usually very simple, right? It's like, oh yeah, duh, that makes sense. Like, of course it's that simple. Like, these things aren't complicated. Cancer, we make it the most complicated thing in the world, multi-trillion-dollar industry, millions of people dying every year. Oncologists telling you they have no idea what causes it, must be genetics. But when you look at the peer-reviewed research and you look at the case studies and you look at the people who reverse cancer using a holistic approach, you go, duh, it's so simple. Of course, these 6 core causes cause cancer. Of course, we eliminate these from our lives and do the opposite of them. Cancer is most likely never to show up, or it's going to go away. Duh, right? The things are usually very simple. Doesn't mean they're easy. So I just want to preface that it's very simple. Number one is we have to do what I just said, which is identify where we're having the challenges in our life. So just identify it. The second step of that is we have to accept it, right? And identifying and accepting, I've discovered in my life, are 2 different things. It's like, I have a problem with finances, or I have a problem with health, or I have a problem with my weight, or whatever. Yeah, okay, that's one thing. I've identified it. But do I fully accept it? Do I embrace the responsibility? Do I accept that, hey, this is my challenge that I've taken on, and it's also my opportunity to transform this, and I have the power. So now changing your belief through acceptance that you have the power to transform that for yourself, that you can do it. And so you have to look at yourself every day in the mirror and go, I can do this. One thing I have my cancer patients do, look at themselves in the mirror every single day and say an affirmation, hand on their heart, look at themselves in the mirror and say, I can heal. I am healing. I'm learning more and more how to heal my body. I know that my body's a healing, powerful machine. It's a powerful healing mechanism. And if I give it the right things in the right environment, and I believe I can do it, and I take the right actions, I can heal. I know I can heal, right? So you have to, one, reinforce it, that not only do you accept it, but that you can change it for the better. And then the third thing is, now you do the things that start to transform your subconscious beliefs, those patterns that are dictating 95% of your life. And conscious thinking alone can do it, but it's very slow and very ineffective. And when I mean conscious thinking, that's like just standing there and saying affirmations, right?
Right.
Which is like, it works, but it could take you years and years and years and years, and it may never work for a lot of people. So what they've discovered and what the latest science shows us is that actually, if you get into an emotional state, heart math, people I've worked with for years, a wonderful organization. I'm sure you know them. A lot of people here know them. If you've ever done the heart math method, for example, they have multiple methods. One that they've discovered, and there's multiple like this, in Qigong. So I studied Qigong with a master for the last few years in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And actually, there's some really beautiful Qigong practices and meditative practices that's exactly what they do as well. They go in, help heal the underlying energy blockages, help transform your subconscious beliefs. And so they've discovered is when you get into a heightened, positive emotional state, such as feeling gratitude,
right,
feeling love, feeling a positive emotion, right? And you place your hand on your heart and you actually close your eyes and you breathe deep into your heart. You take those deep breaths, what you're doing is you're actually calming your nervous system and you're starting to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. And when your parasympathetic nervous system is activated, that means your immune system's upregulated and your body goes from a sense of kind of fight or flight or slightly unsafe or slightly anxious to a feeling of peace and tranquility. And in that state of parasympathetic nervous system, your body now upregulates the immune system, turns on rest and digest, turns on rejuvenation and healing. And what's interesting is in that same state is where you access your subconscious mind. That state, if you're ever laying in bed, so I do a meditation every night before bed, and as I'm laying there, one of the things I do that puts me to sleep is I go through my day and think about all the things I'm grateful for. Think about, I'm grateful for my kids and their health and their safety, for the roof over my head, for the healthy food in the fridge, right? All the little things that people take for granted, that I certainly used to take for granted. And I think through all those things, I'm doing that, and then start to kind of reprogram my subconscious, because that state right before you go into sleep is where you're accessing your subconscious, and that's where you can say affirmations where they become effective. Or you can do it in meditation with your heart. The heart math method, as we just talked about, feel gratitude, feel peace, feel tranquility, feel love for someone, something, anything. And then in that state, you can start to transform your beliefs. You can start to reprogram your subconscious. You can take your affirmations that were never working and start to play them on repeat to yourself in that meditative state. And that's where you access the subconscious, and that's where you transform it and reprogram it. And so it's way, way faster and easier and transformational that way, and you get the added physical healing benefits of that than it is just every day repeating to yourself while you're wide awake, I am prosperous, I am healthy, I am happy, right? That's good to do. You can still do that if you want to. I do it, actually. But it's way more effective if you do it when you're in a meditative state, when you get your brain actually into that theta state, right? And you get out of the conscious into the subconscious. And so, like I said, it's simple. It's just a matter of like, are you doing that every day? And I'll tell you how I do it every single day. And it has transformed my life. I do it every morning when I wake up, a few minutes as I'm laying in bed, waking up, coming out of deep sleep into consciousness. It's that veil right there, that as you're moving through that, that's the time to focus on gratitude, and then to focus on how you want your day to go, the things you want in your life. You visualize what you want, you feel it, right? I want to see myself healthy and happy and vibrant. You see yourself maybe playing tennis with your kids or grandkids, right? Or hiking without pain, or whatever it is. You visualize that stuff. You visualize the perfect house coming to you, and you've got the key and you're opening it, and it's like, I got my dream house. Thank you so much. Like, right? You really feel it and visualize it, bring that emotion to it. So you do that start of the day. And then what I do after that too is, I have my tea and I kind of get going in my day, and then I'll actually do like a 5-minute kind of Qigong practice, which is kind of similar to that. But I'm, kind of working with the energy at the same time. And then from there, then I'll actually, either work out and move my body, get my lymphatic system flushed, get the energy flowing, or I'll just start working. Depends on the day. And then I do the same thing throughout the day, I'll do a short Qigong practices once or twice throughout the day. Before interviews like this, I'll do it for a few minutes, connect to, what I say is my higher self, and, ask for guidance and, to deliver and serve and support people at the highest good for all. Right. And then from there, at night, do the same thing as I'm going to sleep. So they become, it's like you don't have, I used to sit for hours and hours a day and meditate, and that's wonderful. And you can do EFT and tapping, or you can do, transpersonal psychology. I just did this session, this emotional healing session with this wonderful woman the other day. Those things you can certainly do.
Right.
You don't have to spend hours and hours at it every single day.
Right.
You can do 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, and you'll see your whole day is significantly better when you're adding these things in. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I find myself a little more peaceful in a crazy situation. Like this morning, my 6-year-old son woke up and unfortunately peed the bed and didn't want to take a shower and didn't want to go to school and was throwing a fit. And it's like, and my wife, she's got to get the kids to school, so she's kind of urgent, needs to go. And my daughter's over there just like chilling, relaxing, like nothing's going on, super sweet, doesn't bother her at all. And like, that's the moment. Those are the moments, the simple things in life where it's like, okay, how do I respond to this? Do I react and get into that energy and like make it worse, or take a few deep breaths, focus on what I'm grateful for? And what I did was just go and hug him and hold him for a little bit and tell him it's okay. Tell him, hey, we have to get ready. We got to go to school. He didn't want to. I had to put his shoes on and put him in the car. He didn't like that. He was upset. He was screaming. He was kicking. But because of all this, I was able to keep myself calm in that situation and keep the calmness throughout. And I've not been perfect at that. And I've certainly had my times of like,
right. Yeah.
Not being that calm and patient for sure. But I can tell you this, because of this, I've gotten 80%, 90% better over the years, for sure.
Thank you for listening to the BriteVibe podcast today. We've got a special event coming up here shortly, July 12th through the 16th, called the Global Happiness Summit. And we're bringing resources from around the country together to talk about happiness and what that means and how to have more of that in our lives. Go to BriteVibe.com, BriteVibe, V-I-B-E.com for more information about the Global Happiness Summit. And we look forward to seeing you July 12th through the 16th. We had the same morning, except my son, who's also 6, almost 7. He didn't get his vitamins this morning that he normally gets, and so he was mad at me because I was like, we were already in the car, already leaving the driveway, and he's like, Mom didn't give me my vitamins. I said, well, we got to get to school. We're already late. And then he, of course, cried and whimpered all the way. And then I got mad. Honestly, I did. I got kind of mad because I tried to talk to him, and I'm reasoning with a 6-year-old. And then I had to calm myself down. And then ultimately what we ended up doing, we got out. I held his hand and said, let's just walk for a while. And so we just walked outside of school. We walked out on the playground, and I just started having him doing breathing exercises, much like you've talked about. I said, let's breathe in through our nose, and then let's blow out the sadness, right? And we just sat there for about 5 minutes, which I could have gone in and got the vitamins, brought them out, right? And it took me 20 minutes, 30 minutes to reconcile what could have taken 5, right? But ultimately, to your point, I had to get my own self de-escalated. I had to, right, and then I was able to hold his hand, and we hugged and we walked and we talked, and then finally I walked him all the way up to his school door, even though he was late. We walked all the way to his classroom door, and then he was fine. But it was really, we have to lead ourselves, right? It's kind of like I had to put my own mask on, my own oxygen mask, before I could put his on, and that's the way we serve others, right? Is not getting as triggered ourselves, or like you're talking about, you're in, throughout your day, if you're doing these practices, which I don't do regularly enough, you've got to just be showing up better for everybody around you. It's not even just your peace of mind. You're creating an energy field around you the whole day that people are just like, wow, I feel good when I'm around Nathan, because he's because you're always in this at least an aware state, probably at the very minimum, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's, I've certainly have my moments. There's no doubt about it. But I can tell you that because of those practices, it will make you way more present in the moment. It will give you the ability to respond rather than react. One of my early spiritual mentors, when I lived in San Diego, Arturo Gaitan, one of the things he always told me was responsibility is the ability to respond. Yeah. So if you want to be responsible for yourself, responsible to your children, your grandchildren, responsible to your family, to your friends, to your clients, to your colleagues, then to do that, we have to improve our ability to respond to those situations in our life, right? And so that's what it means to be responsible, is to go, okay, how do I respond to this? Like you did, beautiful story with your son this morning. How do I respond to this situation rather than react to it?
Right.
Because subconscious equals reaction.
Right.
You know, we go back to that traumatized 6-year-old, that traumatized 9-year-old. I don't get what I want.
Right.
Well, what do I want as a parent? I want my kid to put his freaking shoes on and get in the freaking car and go to school. Right. So what's happening? Oh, my 6-year-old trauma of not getting what I want when I was 6 is being triggered. Right. So what do? I recognize that. Okay, there it is. Okay, that's fine. I love you. I can deal with this. What does he need? What did my 6-year-old need? Well, my 6-year-old just needed to be hugged. Just needed to be loved.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. Okay, so what do? Well, let me just hug him and love him for a little bit. Right? Am I going to have to force his shoes on and put his seatbelt on and stuff like that? I might have to do that, even though I don't want to, but I'm going to do it with as much love and awareness as I possibly can.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so that's our children, for parents tuning in, but that's true for if you're in a business relationship, or you're working with a client, or if you're dealing with a spouse or a loved one, right? We all trigger those things in ourselves. Right. That may, I say something to a family member or a loved one, and they get triggered and they react right away. And it's like, I can get into that reaction as well. Right. If I'm not aware, and I certainly do that sometimes, but I do it way, way, way less. And I'll tell you what, my life and your life will be so much happier when you don't react so aggressively all the time. You go, oh, that's just, their beliefs, their subconscious, they're being triggered. That's okay. I can love them as they are. I don't have to get into that. And I can tell you where it's like with my wife the other day. She was saying something that normally would have triggered me in the past, and I'd be like, I have to kind of get on the defense and say, did you realize what you just said? And and I saw myself in the moment almost doing it. And I go, oh, I have no need to do that. Right. No desire to do it. It's going to bring no benefit to anybody. So I let it go. I don't internalize it, right? I don't create another little tiny adverse event or trauma or storage. It's like, no, okay, I don't need to do that. It's not going to help anybody. I release that. And the more you do that, the more it's like, let's say this trauma is this big, and the more you do that, it's like you make that trauma, you kind of shed a little piece off. That's how I look at it. You make that trauma a little smaller, a little smaller, a little smaller, eventually till it's gone, and you don't even have those impulses any longer. And that just comes with that work that we do on an ongoing basis. And as you're saying that, I'm also thinking for those, I'm typically more passionate, a little bit more vocal. So when I get triggered, I can be in your face a little bit. My wife would never think that of me, though, right? but let's get her on here.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, your spouse can trigger you? Is that right? I didn't realize that every day. But for people that are more introverted, it can actually be withdrawal, right? So there's, we're talking about, and you're a very passionate person, so I bet you're a little bit more externally, like when you get elevated, it becomes a little bit more external. But for people who are a little bit more introverted, it can look like pulling away, shutting down, avoidance. So it doesn't mean that you're not triggered. It just means that how you respond, how an introverted person respond might be going internal and shutting down versus getting external and blowing up. But it's same.
Which is just as bad.
It's the same. Yeah, right. You're still having a negative. You're still going to have a negative reaction to what's going on. So just because
and bad, not saying wrong. Bad saying that the result is not going to be good. It's not going to be what you want. Like the result. What I'm trying to teach my 6-year-old son, for example, is hey, I wish we're all taught at 6 years old is, hey, this outburst that you're having right now, this is not going to get you what you want, right? You're crying and screaming and kicking because you want a toy right now. You're, as an adult, it's like you may not cry and kick and scream, you don't get what you want, but you behave in other ways that are not ideal, but it's realizing
not gonna get you what you want.
It's not going to get you what you want, right? And so teaching that and recognizing that for ourselves. All right, if I behave this way, here's the result that it's going to bring, and that result is going to be less than ideal. So what I really want is a much better result. So if we look at the result we want, we figure out, all right, what's the behavior, what's the thinking, what's the practices that's actually going to get me that health, that cancer-free diagnosis, that long, happy life, that perfect dream house or dream job or whatever it is that you're desiring in your life, right? What's the behaviors, the actions, the thinking that's actually going to get me that result?
Right.
And if I've been working towards that for quite a while and it's not anywhere close to me, I'm not seeing progress towards it, then I need to change what I'm doing, right? I need to change my approach.
Right.
And so you were saying something a moment ago I wanted to touch on that I think was important. Let's see if I can remember.
And everybody's going to have to tune in to the next show to get the next 3, right? This is kind of one of those cliffhanger things. Well, that was the first 3, and if you'd like more, you're going to tune in 30 days. No, so we probably should give them the other. Well, if the listeners need them, great, but I still need the other 3. I think you've given us 3.
Remind me of the other 3. I don't even know where we were.
I think you said there were 6 things. We started with awareness, accepting, and then also using heart math to breathe in. Maybe we're on number 2. I don't know if we were on number 2 or 3. I think you started off with there are 6 things that we can do to kind of address the subconscious. That's where we were. That's where we started.
Okay, well, so that third piece is practice, right? Sometimes daily practice. Yep. The fourth piece, we just covered everything else there, right? The fourth step is really to catch ourselves in the moment now.
Got it.
So every time something happens, kind of catch yourself and go, there it is.
Right.
There it is. Okay. The fifth step now is to, when we catch ourselves, now you accept it. You don't judge it. You don't
make it right or wrong.
Right. You don't say, oh, this is bad. This is wrong. I shouldn't do this. It goes, there it is. Step 4. Step 5, I accept that as it is. And step 6 is now you love that part of yourself. So you give that love to that 6-year-old inside you, that 9-year-old inside you, that 38-year-old inside you, that 49-year-old inside you. You give love to that part of yourself, right? And so it's that simple step-by-step process that goes, okay, recognize it, accept it, and now I give love to it. And the more you give love to it, the more you transform it.
And how do you give, I think that's a difficult step, at least for me, is how do you give love to something that you probably detest in yourself, reject in yourself, or have historically, right? Like I hate bullies. There's a reason that I hate bullies, because I'm a damn good one, right? And so I've had to come to terms with that. And that's part of the awareness, and that's part of the breathing in and self-regulation, and right. But I've had to come to terms with that. I don't love. I still am not at a place where I love the bully in me, because I can see how it's passion. I can see how that also is an expression of creation. Like when I'm in my creative mode, that fuels that passion, but I still hate bullies, and therefore I'm still dealing with the bully in me. So in my brokenness, how would you coach me on loving the bully in me?
It's really funny because I was literally just having a walking meeting with my friend and business partner. We do these once a week out in the forest. We walk for about an hour and talk. It's really a great way to have a meeting for anybody who's interested. And I was telling him I used to bully the bullies. Right?
Exactly.
I hated bowling in school, and I ended up getting a lot of fights because I would end up fighting the bullies. Right. And so I totally get what you're saying. And so I guess the question I would ask you, or anybody tuning in dealing with anything similar, as you ask yourself this, is why is it do you feel that you hate bullies? Like, what is that? What do you hate about bullying? What's the thing that you hate?
And so for me, I think I was, as a kid, I did experience being bullied to some degree, or just being a small kid. I was a super small kid. And so therefore I got picked on some, right? I was never or horrible, but it was, picked on, beat on some by other kids, right? It wasn't rejection necessarily. It was kind of like a hazing almost. It's kind of the way I would feel about it. And so I think from that young age, I didn't want anybody else to ever experience that. So I just got really good at doing myself. So like anytime I feel like somebody's being bullied, then I attack the bully, right? And I just go like, and it's not a physical altercation. I'm not going and beating somebody up physically, but I can get super direct, right? In a very pointed, if you're going to hurt this person, then I'm going to come hurt you, right? You're going to experience what you're giving out. But then unfortunately that made me, that gets misguided when I'm triggered and I don't self-regulate, right? Then I'm just, I've gotten better with age and processing and letting go. But yeah, so for me, it's still that feeling like I need to defend the little guy or the person who can't defend themselves. That's where it resonates from.
100%. And I can totally relate to that as well, because I not only was I bullied when I was younger, then I turned around and bullied others who were weaker than me.
Right.
And then I turned from bullying those who were weaker than me into turning into bullying people who were stronger than me, which was just an ego thing, right? It was just trying to build a sense of security and confidence, trying to have a sense of safety. And I think what we're all looking for in our lives, certainly as children and adults, is a sense of safety, a sense of respect, right? A sense of trust, that we can trust others, we can feel safe around others, that we can respect others and they can respect us. I think those are just natural desires that we have internally, whether we're aware of them or not, right? And so look at the first time in your life, and people tuning in, whatever challenge you're going through, look at the first time in your life. What is the first time you remember? How old were you when you remember being bullied for the first time?
I think...
Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, probably. But I think before that, I think it was more of the loss of sense of control, or the sense of I'm safe. Like you said, safety. I think for me, it started with the loss of sense of safety, which I was 7. My dad had a manic break. He ended up being diagnosed bipolar and had to go to a mental hospital. And that was my thing, right? That was my childhood trauma moving forward, was just the roller coaster ride that bipolarism is. And so for me, I think it was more of feeling unsafe. And then anytime later that it popped up physically that I felt unsafe, it kind of reinforced that the world or my environment isn't always safe, and I need to kind of be stronger, right? I need to be tougher. I need to be more of a man. You know, I went through a phase in my 20s and 30s where I, was smoking cigars and partying and doing all the stuff that I thought real men did, right? And then at some point I was like, if this is what real men do, then this is pretty shallow existence, right? This isn't, right? I'm not Hugh Hefner.
Like, I don't want to be a real man if this is what it is.
Well, this isn't really, I think internally I finally figured out it wasn't serving, right? It wasn't serving anybody but my ego. And it was like, this is stupid, right? But so anyway, I think for me, it was that sense of what you talked about, that safety, security. And so whenever I feel unsafe emotionally or think other people are unsafe emotionally, that's kind of more of the rescue than a physical thing.
Totally. Right. And so what I do, and what I think all of us can do, is and practice more of. And I, it's like I said, it becomes a practice. It's like something that I have to be aware of and practice it. Sometimes I can forget, and then I get out of balance. But more and more, the more we practice it, the easier it gets, right? The more and more I go to the gym and lift weights, it's like my muscles respond, my joints and tendons respond, my body responds. I can go in there and lift the weights exactly as I want to, and I'm going to, feel great when I come out of it. It gets easier and easier, and I feel better and better as I do it. And it's the same thing here. We practice it, it gets easier and easier, and we feel better and better. And it's recognizing, could you see, if you look back at any bully, let's first look at like a 10-year-old bully or 12-year-old bully. Could you see the possibility that the reason that person is bullying somebody else is the same reason that you have for not feeling safe? It's the same reason that you have for being having not a sense of safety. Is it for you to go internal and to feel this sense of lack of security, lack of safety, lack of respect, whatever it is, right? The same thing. Could you accept that the same thing happened to that person, but the reason, but their expression of it is the opposite? Right. That they go, look, I don't feel safe so because somebody has treated me poorly. Right. Father figure, could be an uncle, could be another bully. Right. But somebody treated me poorly. Somebody bullied me. Right. So there's two, just like you said, there's two ways people respond. They either go inside and go internal and try to kind of hide away and do this, or they do what I did and what a lot of others do is they go external and they dish it out on somebody else. Right. Yep. So that you're both actually dealing with the exact same underlying thing. Right. Right? Yep. And so what do you both need? What does both of those 6 and 9 and 12-year-olds need? Well, and I wrote this down early in the program that love heals all, because you had said something about love, and I was like, oh yeah, love heals all. I got to remember that. So so love and in love gets wrapped security, acceptance, Totally.
You know, all of the things get, when I say love, it's not just a hug, right? This is like a safety. I'm okay. Totally. You're okay. You know, God loves me. People love me. The world, you know, the world's a safe place, right? It's not just a kumbaya, give me a hug, right?
Totally. And so the practice becomes in those situations that we face, those challenging situations in our life, whatever it is. Let's say you see an adult picking on somebody else, right? Or you see somebody bullying somebody else, whatever it might be. They're belittling them. They're treating them poorly. You know, the first thing you can do is actually look at that person and try to find the 6-year-old or 9-year-old in them that was bullied, that was treated poorly, that was molested, that was beat. Right? There was so many terrible things that happen to kids nowadays. There was, you know, sent to a foster home, that whatever happened, see that child and go, what does that person need? Oh, that person needs a hug. That person needs love. That person needs compassion. And so you do that first. And then that kind of activates you to be in a place to, and then you can even see that 6-year-old or 9-year-old that was bullied or treated poorly in yourself and go, what does that person need? Oh, that little person needs a hug. They need love. They need compassion. They need to be told that, look, everything's going to be okay. You know, you are safe. I'm here for you. Right. So that's the practice. And then your response in that situation becomes one out of, I would say, higher intelligence. And it might be that you still stop it. You might have to stop whatever that altercation is, but you do it in a much more intelligent way. And I'll give you one example of how this worked for me recently. I was in San Diego a few months back, and I was walking down the street, and I saw there was a homeless man on one corner, and he was tearing garbage out of the trash can and throwing it on the street.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And just throwing, and he was yelling and screaming, and he had piss all over himself and shirt off, and really, really, I mean, definitely going through some kind of, you know, psychotic episode, or you know, dealing with some challenges mentally, emotionally. Obviously, physically, he's homeless. He looks like he's, you know, struggling. And there's a young person across the street, valet. He's working valet at a hotel, and he's yelling at the homeless man. Knock that off! I'm gonna come over there. Quit that. It looked like he was like bullying him. He was like, he was threatening him. He was saying, I'm gonna come over. You know, if you don't knock it off, I'm gonna, you know, beat you up. Like he was, and I was like, oh, okay. I walked right in the situation. I'm like, do my practice, breathe, all right. You know, guide me to respond. Okay, this homeless man, he needs love, he needs kindness. This young person across the street, he needs love, he needs kindness, all right. You know, do it quickly. The more you practice, the quicker it is. And then I'm there. I'm strong in certainty and in compassion. And I go, okay, what's the best thing to do right here? Let's just watch for a moment and see what happens. Because my natural reaction was like, go defend this homeless man against this young guy that's going to beat him up. It's like, stop him, right? But it's like, oh, I don't need to do that just yet. Let's just see how it plays out. And I was ready. If that guy was going to come over and start attacking the homeless guy, I would stop. I would stop him, right? Some people may not have that kind of confidence and conviction or whatever, and that's fine too. You can call the police or do what you have to do. But
intervene in some way,
Yeah, you do it out of a place of higher intelligence, not out of fear, right? You do it out of a place of like, okay, what's the best thing to do for this entire situation? And so I just watched for a little bit, and then what happened was the homeless guy actually stopped doing what he was doing and just started walking around the corner and still shouting and screaming and yelling and like ripping flowers out of the ground and throwing them and things like that. And then the young guy disappeared somewhere too. I don't know, he went to the back or something. And I was like, okay, what can I do here to make this better? So I walked up to the man and I just said, excuse me, sir. I said, I just wanted to tell you something. I wanted to tell you that I love you. And he started yelling and screaming at me. And what'd you say? And I said, honestly, I just want to tell you that I love you. I want you to know that you're loved, and that I care for you, and people care about you. And he's like, are you messing with me? What are you saying? And I said, no, I'm being honest here. I'm telling you, just want you to know that you are loved. And immediately, it took about 3 times of saying it, he went from this crazy psychotic, you know, aggressive, angry to totally calm, relaxed, and started having, you know, a very interesting conversation with me. That was quite fascinating, actually. And then he ended up saying something to me that was perfect for what I needed to hear that day. You know? And had I not been practicing these things the time that I had, and had gotten to that place in my own life and had the, that inner awareness to do something like that, that situation may have unfolded terribly wrong, and totally, not wrong, but terribly worse.
Right.
And in fact, something beautiful may have come from that.
Right.
And I think that's it, is find those opportunities in life to turn our pain into purpose, right? To turn our challenges into beauty. And it's like the lotus flowers. I have a tattoo of the lotus because it's in the Buddhist tradition, right? The lotus flowers, it grows in the mud. Like it can still be connected to the mud, to the dirt, to the dirtiness of life, the muddiness of life. And out of that can come this glorious, most beautiful expression of life. And I think that's what it is staying connected to the mud of life, but not being of that mud, rising above it and bringing that beauty to the world. And we do that through, like I said, all these things that we've been talking about.
It's beautiful, beautiful. And thank you for walking us through those steps. I know I've taken a lot away from today, or just, reinforced and also enlightened new areas of my consciousness to think about, and certainly it's helped. I know my day will be better because we did this podcast today. Just because
mine will too, actually. So thank you for every time I talk about this, it forces me to become better in my own ways as well. Right. To continue finding those areas of my own life and say, I'm definitely not perfect there. Definitely not perfect there. All right, let's see how I can, just try to be a little bit better. Not to be perfect, just try to be a little bit better.
And something that's been on my heart since we've started talking, and it's just grown and grown and grown, is I really appreciate about you that I think what's missing, I wouldn't say missing, I won't go from lack, I'll go from the other, what we need more of. Right? What we need more of in life, I believe, is strong male role models and strong males like yourself who are doing the work. They're leaning in, they're processing stuff, because I think as, we have lots of men and women that come on the show, and typically women are, more proactive about processing pain, than men are, and I'm painting a broad general thing here. Sure. But I really like that, you're speaking at it, but you're also speaking at it from a masculine standpoint, or you're a man. And so you're also very, like, with that love, that's something that I think for a lot of men, myself included, I'm going to put myself in that category. What you did with that homeless person is totally masculine, totally appropriate, totally what that man needed. And it didn't lessen you. It didn't make you, being loving to another male person in that situation didn't diminish your masculinity. If anything, you were showing leadership. You were showing how to rise other men up. And I think I'm starting to see more and more of it, but I would just highly encourage any men listening and women to support. I know there's a lot about stuff in the news media and culture right now about empowering women. And I'm totally about that, 100% behind empowering women, because I think there's been historical suppression of women. But I think there's also been historical suppression of true masculinity, of true men serving humanity, men serving other men serving culture, humanity, because I think there was a lot of just misinformation. Like I said, when I grew up, it was like being a man was smoking a cigar and having a scotch and playing golf and clubbing and womanizing and gambling, and that was just what the role. I was just watching TV and seeing that's what you did, and that's not true masculinity. There's nothing wrong with doing some of those things in moderation. I'm not saying you can't smoke a cigar or drink scotch or whatever you want to do. But I just don't think that's, I just really appreciate, I guess, that's a long way of complimenting you, or saying, I really appreciate how you're showing up in the world and what you're doing, because it's not easy. It's not common, right? It's something that needs more of. And so I just appreciate your authenticity today on the show.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would definitely echo that. I think it's kind of looking at it like reshaping what does masculinity look like, right? Reframing it and saying, look, masculinity is both strength as well as kindness. Yes, right. It's like it's the yin and the yang. It's the ancient wisdom of, look, we need the confidence and the strength and that side of the ego, the positive side of the ego, to take action, to get things done, to be a protector, to really dive into that part of ourselves. And at the same time, if we're only in that and we're not in feeling love and kindness and peace and tranquility. You know, the peaceful warrior is a great example of that.
Yes, exactly.
That we're totally out of balance in our lives, and we're going to be unhappy. We're going to be unhealthy. We're going to be unhappy, and we're certainly not going to be fulfilled. What I discovered is I went from two extremes. Like growing up, I went from hardcore, same thing, like masculinity, toughness, fighting, aggression, all of that. And then when I dove into spirituality, like 17 years ago, I went the opposite extreme. You know, like way too feminine, like like totally. You know, a little bit too much of the kumbaya, I think, to the point of where it was detrimental to me. It was actually mentally, emotionally, physically detrimental to me, because I was out of balance with my nature, and my nature is to be in balance with both masculine and feminine, and the feminine is not something to shy away from or to think of like, oh, that's just sissy stuff or whatever, and vice versa. It's like people who become so much in tune with their feminine as I did, then people walk all over you, and you allow it, and you become a doormat, and I don't think any of us in this life want to be a doormat. Right? And so it's finding that balance of like, how can I have peace and compassion and love and still be strong and confident in myself? And that's, you know, that's a journey for all of us to discover for ourselves. Some people naturally may have a little more masculinity or a little more femininity, and that's fine. But balance, when we're at the extremes is where you're going to have problems. And if you have problems in your life, one way or the other, you can most certainly usually trace it back to like being out of balance in one of those two kind of core areas of our lives. And I think women and men both need to have a good balance in both. Women generally, I mean, just biologically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. I mean, their brains, their bodies produce more estrogen, progesterone for a reason. Men, our bodies and you know hormonal system, endocrine system produces more testosterone for a reason. There's a reason behind that. When we start manipulating with that and changing all that, it's like people can do whatever they want. I'm totally fine with that. I accept all of it. But we start manipulating it and changing it, then we start changing our nature. When we change our nature, we become very, very unhappy in life.
And I think that, and I think kind of, you know, to kind of wrap that up, I think that's back to kind of where we started was ultimately, are you feeling happy? Are you feeling passion? Are you feeling engaged? Because if you're not, that's the first indicator of that something's out of balance, right? I mean, if you're not feeling passion, energy, love on a fairly consistent basis, then probably something's out of balance. And then let's address that. Let's not just suppress it, because then it's going to, as you pointed out in the beginning of the show, then we're going to turn that into disease so that you don't have a choice whether you're going to deal with it or not. You're going to, it's either going to be cut out of you, or it's going to, you're not going to be here physically. I mean, there's lots of consequences to not dealing with the tragedies or the stuff that happened in our life, right?
Exactly. Like I can go to CrossFit or weightlifting and be super intense and strong and raw and dump my testosterone and adrenaline and feel amazing. And then I go home and I meditate and I sauna and I'm, you know, read great books and I'm peaceful, and that's what, you know, and I recharge in that way. So it's like I can do both and be very, very fulfilled in that way. I find if I do one way more than the other, either end, then I'm not full. I might be okay, but I'm definitely not fulfilled. When I'm doing both those things in balance, like I'm way more fulfilled throughout the day. So I think that's a good takeaway for people. But yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the show today. You know, when you do shows, as you know, when you do shows like this, you always have a little bit of an expectation of where the show is going to go, and you know, and certainly it's been more than I expected, and I feel very honored and humbled that we've had this amount of time to spend today together, and hopefully our listeners have had some really good awareness and insights as well. So thank you for coming on the show today.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. It's great to get to know you. And the great work you're doing, and I appreciate you having me here for sure.
Yes, and before we close, how do people get a hold of you? How do people engage with more of the work you're doing, the research, the stuff you're delivering? Websites, you know, email, social media. What's the best way to kind of be a Nathan Crane fan? What's the
Yeah, if you look out your window right now, I might be pulling a sled behind me on the street, you know, running down the street, you know, trying to get stronger.
Right. Yes.
Online though, just nathancrane.com.
Okay.
I've got some great free resources for there. I've got a natural health newsletter people can sign up for.
Perfect.
There as well. And then for people who are more interested in understanding cancer and a holistic approach to cancer prevention and cancer healing, I have a free ebook people can download. It's actually it's a #1 best-selling Amazon book called Becoming Cancer Free. People can buy it for like $10 on Amazon. Yeah. I just want to get that information out to the world, and it's been transforming many people's lives. But I give away the PDF free at becomingcancerfree.com. Okay. For anyone who wants a PDF, I just want to get it out there to the world. Right. So
becomingcancerfree.com, and we'll put this in the show notes. But if you're not seeing it, becomingcancerfree.com, that's where you go to get that free ebook. And that's awesome that you're doing that and making that available for free to anybody who wants to dive more into their own health. And I would say, I'm sure it's not just for people with cancer, it's for people who don't want to get cancer, right? I mean, that's
100%.
Yeah, it's for everybody, not just that you or someone in your family. All of our lives have been touched by cancer, but certainly let's try to make that less and less with each generation. So again, thanks for coming on. We do have our Global Happiness Summit coming up. Hopefully you'll be able to come to that in July. I'd love to have you on there as a live resource and field some questions and talk to people. It's going to be a great time and lots of good stuff there. So again, thanks for coming on today, and I look forward to visiting with you more here in the near future.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you for being a part of the BriteVibe podcast. For more information, go to BriteVibe.com. That's BriteVibe.com. Thank you for listening.